Hi everybody, my name is Dave Seeley. I'm one of the co-chairs of this committee. The other co-chair is Karen Quogue. She's over here somewhere. Oh, there's Karen. That's the other co-chair. A couple of things tonight. Can everybody silence those cell phones because it's distracting to people. We're not professionals at this, so I'd like to try and keep pace here. So a couple housekeeping things. Myself, my name is Dave Seeley. Like I said, I'm here because I'm a 43-year resident of this town, and I'd really like to see this beautiful village come to fruition and keep it quaint, keep it beautiful, keep it ours. So this is not a hearing, this is an informational presentation that we put together. It's been going on for about 7 months now, and Karen will get into that. But we'd like to keep it civil, and we're all community members, we're all neighbors, so let's keep it as civil as possible. Let's not talk over anybody, and mostly be respectful. If you have any questions, there's a card that we had in the back of the room. We'd like you to write it on the card so that we can answer them as best we can. Hopefully you've been passed around. If they haven't, you can raise your hand, we'll get you one. And any question, all questions. If there's something you don't understand, that means that we didn't do our job and explain it correctly. You know, we all understand things slightly differently. Please do not hesitate to ask us a question, any question, every question. Other than that, I think we can get going. Would you like to come up, Karen? Thank you, everybody.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Karen Quogue, and as Dave said, I am the co-chair of the East Quogue Village Exploratory Committee. And like you, I love East Quogue. I'm a longtime resident of our hamlet. I raised my 2 children here, and my parents and my brother also live in this wonderful community. Like us, I imagine that you are all here because you want to know more about what is going on. You want a voice in the future of our hamlet. You want a healthy school in Main Street, and like us, you want the lowest taxes possible. We on the committee want East Quogue to stay mostly the same, while improving and growing in an appropriate and balanced way. Change is inevitable, but how we change is not. We want to protect our school, our business district, and our taxes. We want to protect our environment. We want to protect and improve water quality. We want to see improvement in our community. We want to maintain our quality of life. Unfortunately, recent events have shown us that we have no say in what is happening to our community. Outside forces are currently controlling our future. People we may or may not have voted for, but who definitely do not live here, are making decisions for us. Other people we do not elect say they speak for us, say they speak for everyone in East Quogue, and people from outside of East Quogue speak up about East Quogue issues all the time. We are only 8% of the voting population of the town of Southampton. The other 92% of the town can weigh in on what happens here. So we think it is high time that we make decisions about East Quogue, the people in East Quogue elected by the people of East Quogue. Before I go any further, I'd like to introduce you to the members of the East Quogue Village Exploratory Committee. Since December of 2017, this group of East Quogue residents has spent countless hours looking into the benefits the residents of our hamlet would receive if we were to incorporate into a village. Every volunteer on this committee is a resident of East Quogue. We serve or have served on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, the Board of Education, the East Quogue Beautification Committee, the Citizens Advisory Committee. We have been active in all aspects of East Quogue life. So, the committee, please stand as I call your name. Brian Babcock, who's not able to be with us tonight as his daughter is competing in the World Gymnastics Championship in Florida, very exciting. Richard Blows, unfortunately, had a death in the family, not able to attend. But moving on, we have Greg Seeley, Sharon Seeley, Maria Didino, Jeff Delandro, Skip Heaney, not able to attend tonight as well, Jessica Insulaco, Kathy Johnson in the back of the room taking signatures on the petition, Walter Masico-Bateri, our valet there, Cindy McNamara, also in the back of the room, Kristen Pappas, right here, Kathy Seeliger, also in the back of the room, and Ed Selton-Rich, right there. Okay. We also have we have 2 special guests here tonight, Mr. Peter B. Esquire from the law firm of B. Reddy, Fishbein, Hatter, and Donovan, experts in municipal and election law. Mr. B and his firm have been retained through donations from the committee, friends, family, and local businesses. Now, we have a lot of information to share with you tonight, so we have cards available to, Walter has them back there. Raise your hand, we'll give you a card, we can write down our questions. And please, out of consideration of your time, we would like to limit questions to those who live within the proposed boundary. If we have time at the end, we can take questions from those outside the boundary. We've done a lot of groundwork and a lot of research. Now we want to hear from all of you to help move this forward. So please write down your thoughts and questions as we go, and let's get started. Now, we have heard some grumbling that this incorporation effort is about the hills. This effort has nothing to do with the hills. The Hills Planned Development District is over. But it is because of the hills that we started talking. The application by Discovery Land for the Lewis Road Planned Residential District is already through the pre-app phase and is currently before the Southampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals. The developer has applied for 118 homes and a golf course with amenities with this application. With this application, there are no required community benefits as with the PDD. The decision will be coming in the near future from the town of Southampton, not from us. What we would also like to address is that the committee that you see here, along with many generous businesses and residents of East Quogue, represent 100% of our funding. We have not sought nor accepted any funding from Discovery Land. As the Discovery Land project or any other development moves forward, we want to make wise decisions regarding our future and keep related investment in East Quogue. The village of East Quogue can direct and retain the permit revenues from whatever building takes place in our village once we are established. The village of East Quogue can maintain oversight of the development processes. The village of East Quogue can weigh in, but only if we are a village. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have a special guest here tonight, Mr. Peter B. from the law firm, Be Ready, Fishbein, Hatter, and Donovan. And Peter's very knowledgeable about villages in practical terms, in general terms. And before we go any further, what we'd like to do is have Peter talk about exactly what we mean by an incorporated village, what are the benefits of incorporating, and what the process is. So, welcome, Peter B. Peter B, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And it actually is B-E-E, like Bumblebee. And you should meet my daughter, May. Even I wouldn't do that. I have been involved in government for a long time, and I think what got me started was actually within the town of Southampton. Back in the late 70s, there was a small bankrupt condominium development of 37 units where you could purchase the units at bankruptcy prices, foreclosure prices, and for the enormous sum of $4,000, I was able to put 10% down, 90% financing, and buy one of the condominium units. Closed, life was wonderful, and I got a letter in the mail that the sponsor, now having sold enough units, was walking away. Good luck and goodbye. And it suddenly occurred to me, who was going to take care of the roadway into the condominium development? Who was going to make sure that the tennis court got swept? Who was going to pay for the common ownership of the condominium? And in a mad rush, I organized all of the 37 unit owners and formed a condominium association. Suddenly found myself as the president of the association, and I had, in effect, a small village. We had to discover our powers and the limits of our powers. We had to hire staff to take care of the infrastructure, clean it and maintain it. We had to be sure that dues were collected sufficient to pay for that staff, understand that we didn't want the monthly cost of our condominium to wildly skyrocket because we had all bought them at foreclosure prices and wanted to keep the expenses down. And it was literally, in many ways, like running a small village. And that really sparked an interest on my part in politics and government. In the subsequent years, I've had the privilege of serving as a village trustee for a period of 14 years, and took my turn at bat as the mayor for 2 years in the village of Garden City in Nassau County. My law practice is very much focused on local government representation. We are counsel to the Suffolk County Village Officials Association. I'm a former member of the executive board of the Nassau Village Officials Association. We represent a number of individual villages, acting both as general counsel and special counsel, working with my associate, Steve Martier. And we've spent a lot of time understanding the benefits and some of the downsides of being in government. And to that end, in addition to understanding the process by which a local government is formed, we were asked to come here tonight and for me to comment on some of the advantages and some of the downsides to becoming a village. And to that extent, I would like to see if we could go to the next slide. One of the terribly discouraging things about someone who's involved in government is to discover how little most people not involved in government don't care about government. If you stop people on the street, many do not know whether they live in a village or a town, or the difference between the two, or how school districts are set up, or what the difference is between a town and a county. There's just the government and us, which is disheartening to those people who are in government, and should be disheartening to you. I yearn for the days when civics was actually a class in school, but it isn't anymore, so this is in part an opportunity for a civics lesson. You live right now in what we refer to as a hamlet. That means it's a neighborhood. It has no legal standing at all, except as a census tract for the federal government and a way of referring to an area within a town. These different levels of government in New York State are the state, counties, towns, villages, for all practical purposes. There are a series of what are known as special districts, but putting them to the side, the general power to govern is vested in counties, towns, and villages. And partly it relates to population and geography, but mostly not. Mostly it's a determination of how the people in a given area choose to be governed. How much power do they want to give to a chief executive officer? What kind of laws do they want this entity to have? And they are, of course, also historical products. They evolved from the 1700s, from the common law of England, from the way that different settlers settled different parts of New York State. But in broad terms, New York State creates or allows the creation of these different levels of government. A village is a level of government. That means that it has the power to enact laws to focus on the health and safety and well-being of the citizens in that community. So it is not only empowered to say, what are your problems? It is empowered to make laws to try to deal with those problems. A hamlet is nothing more than an unincorporated area. It doesn't really have an official spokesperson. It can't act as a unit, whereas a village can. A village is empowered to do all of the things in many ways, a village mayor is more powerful than a town supervisor within the village boundaries. A town supervisor can do almost nothing without the approval of his or her town board. A village mayor is empowered to do a number of different things, even without the authority of a village board, such as, although we would hope it would never happen, declare a state of emergency and issue all kinds of rules and regulations. Last happened, I think, in Sandy, where the town supervisor discovered some of the limits on his power and the village mayors were able to do things he couldn't. But to, I think, your concerns, a village government is empowered to enact zoning laws. What does that mean? A zone is an area within the village, or the entire village, a subset of the geography of the village, in which the local government says, only the following things can be built here, and only the following kind of uses can exist here. So this area over here is for residential homes. This area over here is for commercial buildings. It deals with area and use. So in area, it's how high can the house be? How tall can the manufacturing plant be? How much of the lot can the house cover? How much of the lot can the commercial building cover? So how tall, how wide, how much of a structure, how many housing units in an apartment building? All of those kinds of things deal with the area of a physical structure. Similarly, can you have residences here? Can you have multifamily residences here? Can you have hotels here? Whatever the use is. So those are the concepts of zoning. And the idea is that a village wants to have a plan for how its land will ultimately be developed. You don't necessarily want a apartment building in the middle of an area that has single-family homes. Some people do, many don't. You don't necessarily want a dry cleaner in the middle of a residential section. So your ability to say only these kinds of uses and only these kinds of heights, width, breadth can be in a particular place is your power to zone. Right now, that zoning power belongs to the town. They make those determinations. Now, at a village level, you can say to the town, we don't like your zone. We don't like your zoning plan. We want to do our own. And here's our plan. Now, you cannot immediately eliminate a use or an area structure that you don't like, because they are what's called grandfathered in. If it's been there, you can't tell them they got to knock it down. That's the equivalent of condemning it, which is a way you could take care of it, but that costs money. What you can do is say, from now on, here's the only kind of thing that can be done in this area. That zoning has a spin-off. Not only can you decide that certain uses and certain kinds of height, breadth, etc. are good for a particular area within your village, but you also are empowered to create an architectural design review board that can say, we like this kind of design or we don't. Now, it's not about we like red paint, not blue paint. It's more about, is there too much identical pattern here, or is there too much dissimilar pattern here? There are extremes of similarity and dissimilarity that an architectural design review board can rule that that doesn't work here. And they can encourage people to build in certain ways. You also have the power to create a board of zoning appeals, so that if the zoning doesn't allow a particular use or a particular structure, the owner of that property can go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and say, I know this isn't allowed, but there are special reasons why it would be appropriate in this one spot, even though it isn't generally appropriate in this entire zone. And you get to appoint the members of that Board of Zoning Appeals. Hopefully members whose philosophy of what East Quogue should look like would be comparable to yours. You also can create a planning board to do subdivision reviews. If a developer wanted to develop a certain area of land, how that development would be laid out. Where would the roads go? Will there be sewer connections that are proper? Will there be proper turning lanes for fire vehicles and police and emergency services to get in or out? All of those things can be done at the local level. Those are powers of a village government. I understand that you're not necessarily looking to deliver a greater range of services to your citizens than you're already getting, or not even necessarily a better quality. Both of those things entail expense. That's a decision you can make, but it is not a decision that you have to make for more services or better services at higher expense. It's one you can make, but don't have to make. What it's mostly about is who gets to control the delivery of those services. Do you want to do it at a local level or a larger level? Clearly, a town delivers its services as a way of being responsive to its citizenry, but its citizenry is a larger group than the group that is in East Quogue. So your voices, even if you were nearly unanimous on a particular topic, is only a small voice town-wide. But village-wide, it's a very loud voice. And those are things that you can control within your own territory. I once had the experience of serving on a village traffic commission, which is empowered to regulate traffic on the village roads. And I was driving down the street and I said, this street is dangerous. We should put a stop sign here. About half hour later, I was in the traffic commission meeting and I said, you know, I was driving on such and such a road and I really think it needs a stop sign. Everybody looked at everybody else and said, he's right, we all know that location. We know that street. We know what the dangers are there. Let's put a stop sign there. They turned to the guy who runs the public works and said, tomorrow morning, put up a stop sign. And there was a stop sign. And it was just a real feeling of local control that my neighbors and I could get together, and in the space of 24 hours, we had a stop sign up. Now, maybe we moved a little too quickly. Maybe we could have heard from more people. Maybe all of those things. But it was an interesting example of local control. If it turned out that the people who lived in that section didn't like the stop sign, they could come to the next meeting and tell us to take it down. But you can do something much more efficiently at a village level. Also, generally speaking, at a small village level, your elected officials are not making a career out of being elected politicians. They're your neighbors. They're volunteers. They may get some small stipend to cover expenses they incur, but they're not going to be drawing down a salary of $150,000 a year. All of the village officials in the village of Garden City, where I currently reside, are all volunteers. The whole Board of Trustees, the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Architectural Design Review Board, all of those positions are volunteer positions. Nobody's getting a salary, nobody's getting a pension. So it can be done, and that's a village of 22,000 people, a little bigger than East Quogue. There are other villages where people are paid politicians, hoping that by becoming mayor, they can become the town supervisor and become the county executive and run for governor. It's a way of moving up in the governmental world. But at the village level, mostly that's not true. Mostly you're dealing with your neighbors. You run into them in the supermarket. You're seeing them as you walk down the street. And they're running your government with your input. Next slide. A village has influence. You know that when you speak for yourself, you have some level of influence on the listener. When you speak for 10 others, you have more influence. And when you speak for 1,000, you have a lot of influence. Interestingly enough, the higher up you go the food chain in government, the more political, the more politically professional they tend to be. And they care about how they look to the public, and they care about how the public will vote. Two things that are very related to each other. So they don't want people to think badly of them. And they want people to think well of them. That means delivering what a large group of people want. And if you go to a town supervisor or a county executive and say, I really think that such and such needs to be done, that's interesting. If 100 letters go to that same desk, it's going to get done. And if a mayor can go to that desk and say, I represent the population of the village of East Quogue. And by the way, I send out a monthly newsletter. I have a site on a website. And it reaches all the citizens. And I'm going to tell them what you do and how quickly you do it about this problem. And I'm telling you that I've heard from them already. I am speaking for the residents of that village. And I am telling you that the majority of those residents want this done. You watch how fast it gets done. Now, not everything, I understand that, but your power, your influence over higher levels of government is multiplied if someone can say, I speak for this village. If the Board of Trustees can pass a resolution saying this is our position, and the mayor is authorized to deliver that position to the county executive, the governor, whoever. That's why people do band together. That's why there are associations, so that the power of the group can be used to influence others. And again, keeping the cost down, you have resources as a village. You can have that village website. You can have that mayor's column. You can have the ability not only for you to communicate to your neighbor, board of trustees, and mayor, but the reverse is true. They have the tools at their disposal to communicate to you. That gives them power at the town, county, and state level, because those officials know that the person to whom they're speaking can reach out to the entire population of this village and tell their side of the story and tell it as their neighbor. And that's something the governor can't do in East Quogue. That's something that the town supervisor can't do in East Quogue. But your village board of trustees and mayor will be able to do that. You might be able to tell that I'm a fan of village government. I am, unabashedly so. Are there some downsides? Yes. How many people have seen governments reduce taxes? Doesn't happen a lot. It's probable that over the course of time, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, over the course of time, it is true that governments tend to grow. But a village government can grow a lot slower than other levels, and a village government where you don't like the way they're spending money can be turned over a lot faster than a town or county or state government. And you're not dealing with career politicians. There's a tendency for village trustees to say, if you don't like what I'm doing, you do it and volunteer your time. They're not in it for the money. They're not in it for the career path. They're listening to their neighbors. So village government may grow over time, but it doesn't grow as a result of the politician wanting more power over more things. It will grow because the residents want it to grow. The town government could have a Department of Senior Citizen Affairs. You might want one of your own. Is that duplication of services? Yes. But you might want your residents to be able to call their neighbor and take care of Mrs. Jones, who's not able to get out of her house and needs to have deliveries or be taken to the pool or to be taken to the grocery store. So sometimes the services grow because the larger layers of government are not delivering the kind of service, the quality of service that you want at the village level. But that's in your control. That's your message to your trustees and your mayor. So I don't deny that historically governments do tend to grow, but I will tell you that in my experience they grow a lot slower at the village level, and they grow in response to the citizens wanting it to grow, not because the elected officials are trying to bring power, more control over others' lives. So it's a different kind of a growth. There's a process, and I'm probably going to spend the least amount of time on the process because I think it's already underway. But the short version is that in order to form a village, New York State is remarkably friendly. It's one of the simpler processes, astonishingly so, and you wonder why more people aren't doing it in more places, or I do, because you have to file a petition with the town in which you seek to get at least 20% of the residents in the area that are qualified to vote. That process is underway, and I am told that with guarded optimism, that number is likely to be reached. That petition gets filed with the town. They publish a notice about a hearing that they have to hold. The hearing gets held, the citizens come in, both those who live in the area and those without. It's a great idea, it's a crappy idea, or it's a good idea because of 1, 2, 3, it's a terrible idea because of 4, 5, 6. The hearing is held, and also at the end of that process, the town supervisor has to make a ruling on the sufficiency of the petition, because sometimes some of the signatures will be from people who are not residents qualified to vote. It may be that Mr. and Mrs. Jones both signed the petition. Mrs. Jones is not eligible to vote for whatever reason. Maybe she's not a United States citizen, maybe she's a convicted felon. There are all kinds of reasons why you cannot be an eligible voter. Maybe you live just outside the boundaries that are proposed for East Quogue and you didn't realize that your house wasn't going to be included in the boundaries. So there will be a number of signatures. I can guarantee you that there will be some number of signatures that the town supervisor is going to say, that one doesn't count, which is a reason why you want to get a lot more than 20%, because you know through human error, some number will not qualify. But at the end of the day, there'll be an election if there are a valid number of valid signatures. And the election is, shall we become a village or shall we not? And a majority of those who vote will get to decide the answer. If only 10 people voted, 6 wins the day. So if you have a feeling, a desire that you either want to become a village or you don't, show up and vote. And let the side with the most votes win. I personally think villages are a great idea. I think it gives you local control. I think it gives you power and influence over other levels of government. But I also tell my kids, who sometimes listen, rights and responsibilities travel together. They're a set. So you have all those rights I talked about. But you also then have the responsibility to exercise those rights, which means in a village, you need to be involved. It's not just a question of being involved here to form a village. It's going to be a question of being involved after you've got a village. You need to then be responsible and make sure your trustees do know what you want. And your mayor knows what you want. And you have a responsibility to know who they are and why you're voting for them and that you're going to vote for or against them. So I do encourage you, even if you form this village, which I think is a great idea, don't stop there. Stay involved. Thank you. This is all yours? Yes. Oh, you can have it. Okay. All right.
I'll get all messed up.
All right. That's you too? Oh, you're right. These are all yours. I was almost walking away.
Oh my
Easy.
God, I'm lost. I think I've had this stuff memorized by now, but no, of course I don't. Peter, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. So, what if East Quogue does become a village? What is the best way to do this? And with the lowest cost and the highest impact. After studying many villages, successful and not, we have created the following approach. Whoops. Okay, let's do it that way. We've created the following approach. So let's talk about the proposed village boundary. The boundaries of a village are not arbitrary lines and must meet legal requirements. Based on these restrictions, the boundary lines of our proposed village include the East Quogue School District and the Northern Fire District. This meets the legal requirements for coterminous boundaries with the village of Quogue to the west, Flanders Riverhead School District to the north, and the Hampton Bay School District to the east. Dune Road and the Atlantic Ocean is the southern boundary. So, what would be the mission of the village of East Quogue? A bright future. Provide local control, as Peter mentioned, while staying small, strategic, effective, and inexpensive. And you get to vote on this all the time. Imagine having local issues be the priority of a local government. Imagine keeping the character of East Quogue while having a smart, sustainable plan for the future. Imagine the future you would want for your children and grandchildren, and the ability to have the direct influence to put that in place. So, what we're talking about is East Quogue residents making the important decisions that will affect our hamlet's futures. As Peter stated, with a village you have a say. With a hamlet you don't. You can make decisions on our local assets like Hot Dog Beach, the Bay Avenue Marine Park, and the Village Green. We could have a village newsletter with pertinent information for residents. We can have a town hall or an office near Main Street. You can discuss local issues with someone who lives here and you probably already know. There are 7 incorporated villages in the town of Southampton: Sagaponack, West Hampton Beach, Sag Harbor, Southampton, North Haven, West Hampton Dunes, and Quogue. These villages all share the same aspect of local control, but they are run in very different ways. Our idea is to emulate the approach of Sagaponack, which minimizes government, wisely manages local revenues, and optimizes shared services to keep taxes low. Sagaponack, which incorporated back in 2007, has guided their success through a minimalist approach, gaining control but not reinventing the wheel, using mostly shared services to keep costs low, while deciding what is best for the community. That's what we want to accomplish. Not every attempt to incorporate has been successful, even though most have been. We have seen Mastic Beach recently dissolve after 6 short years of incorporation. Why? Because they tried to take on every service as a small village with no economies of scale, very low tax base, little knowledge, and it was too late. They had already had many years of decline. They simply could not afford to do what they had attempted. We have researched all these villages. We understand our tax base, and what we are proposing is a village that can be sustainable in East Quogue. Why now? We don't want for it to be too late, and we don't want to miss out on important issues and opportunities. We lost millions of dollars of investment and tax relief when the Hills PDD did not receive a supermajority vote, and we are now faced with even more development without all those great benefits. Previous developments, like Southampton Pines, were fought by a vocal minority, and we ended up with more density than what was originally proposed. Another example, there are those in town government who knew about the Damascus dump issues, but did nothing to clean it up. Infrastructure and investments continue in other areas of our town, but not in East Quogue. There are applications in front of the town planning board that most of you in this room might be aware of, including a new convenience store, gas pumps, and an overhead canopy at the gas station on the corner of Walker Avenue and Montauk Highway. The decisions made on these applications will impact the character of our Main Street. These are just some examples of where outsiders have made or will make decisions that currently impact us. What? Did I go backwards? Oh, did that? Proposed services, here we go. Okay, so our proposal is to keep the services that Southampton Town now provides, but add a locally elected, apolitical, unpaid board to review these services to make the best arrangements for East Quogue in the future. The village would form a building department to keep local permit revenue in East Quogue. This is how Sagaponack operates. So, what we are not proposing is creating our own police and highway department like the village of Quogue. We're not interested in that. These services will continue to be provided by the town of Southampton. By law, the town must provide these services at the going rate for anyone in the town. Down the road, we can negotiate these costs with the town. For example, Sagaponack, which has been a village for over 10 years now, has negotiated with the town to pay for highway services based on actual miles of road. They are now paying less for highway services than they did 10 years ago. Southampton Town continues to provide highway services to Sagaponack. And as far as police services go, both Sagaponack and the village of North Haven continue to receive police protection from the town of Southampton. Both these villages are paying for these services at the same rate that we are all paying. So East Quogue residents would continue to receive these services through the town at the same rate or lower than we are currently paying. Our proposed budget, again, small, like Sagaponack. The bare minimum we need to make for our own decisions, largely paid for by permit revenues and other shared revenues like mortgage tax, sales tax, and our shared utilities tax. What is critical to understand is that village budgets are reviewed by village residents and passed by the village board. We have copies of the proposed budget in the back of the room, if you'd like to see them. And these budget and actual revenues are based on East Quogue actuals from the last 3 years. And we'll go into more details on the budget in a minute. How do we make sure that we are strategic, scientific, and actual and factual? Remember I mentioned that's our mission: small, strategic, effective, and inexpensive. So a little history here. Back in 2006, East Quogue was confronted with multiple applications for new subdivisions in the Spinney Hills area with a build-out potential that exceeded 500 homes. There was much concern about the impact on our quality of life, as well as the tax consequences of additional students in our school. In response to this, the town adopted a moratorium on new development in East Quogue and initiated a broad study to analyze different development scenarios. This was done over a period of 2 years, and finally, after receiving significant input from the residents of East Quogue through many public hearings, the East Quogue Generic Environmental Impact Statement was completed. and it made a number of recommendations for East Quogue, including resort-style zoning for Spinney Hills to minimize the impacts on the school district, yet maximize new revenue to pay for the school, and upzoning many properties to reduce density. This is the study that would provide a roadmap for future development within the village boundaries. The CPF fund, we all know that one, and its strategy also has had a big impact on East Quogue. The town has used the fund to purchase the development rights to many of the farms here in East Quogue. It has also preserved and purchased many of the properties, including the Turtle Bay property next to 7-Eleven. East Quogue is one of the most preserved areas in the town. The CPF is a vital part of planning in the town and will be a vital part of planning in the village. The Water Quality Improvement Protection Plan, Project Plan that Southampton Town has adopted provides a roadmap for water quality improvement for years to come. Email? This was based on the very successful Cape Cod Water Protection Study. The village will adopt that same plan to support water quality improvements and protections and push for CPF funds to improve water quality. The village will need to contract a planner from time to time. There's a line item in our budget that will provide for a part-time contractual planner to help navigate all these processes and codes and guide sound decision-making in the planning process. To sum it up, we would use smart planning, research that's already in place, facts from the current town code to make good decisions. As village codes needs to be amended, like Peter mentioned, it will be done according to comprehensive plans and other relevant studies to recognize our present and future needs with direct input from village residents. What do we get? Our village would decide the outcome of any development in our community. Currently, the town board must deal with diverse regional issues, east of the canal issues, west of the canal issues, and they base their decisions on the entire town of Southampton, not necessarily what is best for East Quogue. The town is looking to add more affordable housing in the town, and they are looking at East Quogue and other hamlets to place these developments as they can't control the development process within the villages. We would like to protect our village and use best practices for any type of development like this. The town is also struggling with code enforcement issues in Hampton Bays, which has triggered a lawsuit from the Hampton Bays School District, among others. We can provide needed code enforcement to protect area property owners. All of these decisions will be based on strategic planning, scientific evidence, and the facts. Our village would represent 100% of the residents of East Quogue 100% of the time. Up to now, the town has ignored the priorities of the residents of East Quogue without any repercussions. Why? Again, we represent only 8% of the voting population of the town. Incorporation will give us total control of our hamlet. We will decide. What if we stay a hamlet? The town can change zoning, increase density, and reduce services to meet these regional needs without our input. Hampton Bays could decide to include us in their boundary if they decide to incorporate, and we would not be able to defend ourselves because they have more than 3 times the population of East Quogue. Who would run the village? The village of East Quogue would include a mayor, 4 trustees, and 3 appointed boards. Building, zoning, and planning review boards to administer village code, and a village clerk treasurer to keep all our records. The East Quogue Village Exploratory Committee has no authority. Our only purpose is to present the facts and bring this to a public vote. If the village is formed, the residents could elect representation and anyone could run. Like Sagaponic, all elected and appointed boards will be unpaid and will be subject to term limits. 10 years later, this still applies in Sagaponic, unpaid and subject to term limits. Local control does not mean reinventing things. Like we mentioned earlier, our town services will stay the same, and our plan does not affect the East Quogue School Board nor the Fire Department. Any inefficient town services will be reviewed to see if improvements can be made, thus keeping the costs down for village residents. The proposed village will receive all associated revenues and benefits that come from the permitting process and other government support, not the town. Just to be clear, the village of East Quogue will consist of a thin layer of government, but one with significant local control. So, as Peter V. mentioned earlier, village citizens need to be prepared to serve at some point, and this means you. You need to be prepared to participate more for the betterment of the village. Any changes made to the services mentioned above must be made by the majority of the residents of East Quogue. What we don't want to happen is to have just a few people coming to board meetings, complaining, and making decisions for us. What we need is for everyone to participate and have a voice in their community. So, on to the fun stuff. So, most people we've spoken to since our last presentation are generally in favor of what it is that we are proposing. Most of the questions that we do get asked are in regards to budget and costs. So, we're going to do a brief presentation on how taxes work. So, here we show you how much the tax rate is for state, county, and town services. Some of these services are MTA, real property tax law, county, town highway, town police, and 911 dispatch. So you add all these up, and in 2017, the tax rate for Southampton town residents is $1.59 per assessed $1,000 of assessed value. This is how much we pay for these services. Moving on to the next one, going to our East Quogue services. We look at how much we pay as of 2017 for East Quogue services. These services include the East Quogue Library, Fire District, Lighting District, and School District. These 5 services together total $12.65 per thousand of assessed value. So add it all up, $1.59 for state, county, and town, $12.65 for East Quogue. You get your grand total of $14.24 per thousand. And these numbers are based on 2017 actuals. Of that $14.24 that you saw on the previous slide, $11.52 of it goes to the school. That's about 80% of your total state and local tax bill. The only way to control that 80% from growing significantly is to control zoning and future development in your school district. If there is a great deal of growth of year-round residents, the school costs will go up. The only way to have that control is to become an incorporated village and control our future. All right, let's talk about our proposed village budget. A few highlights here. As we already stated, most town services would stay the same. In order to have the local control we just mentioned, a village portion would be added to your tax bill. The committee projects that this tax bill to be a total of $600,000 for the year. Of that total, $400,000 of that would come from our share of mortgage tax, permits and fees, sales tax, and revenue sharing. These numbers are based also on actuals from the 2017 Southampton Town budget for East Quogue and are appropriate percentages that other villages receive. So, $600,000 in expenses, offset by $400,000 of revenue, that leaves us with a $200,000 difference. This $200,000 tax levy is spread out over the entire tax base of over $2 billion. Take that $200,000 divided by the $2 billion in assessed value, you get 10 cents per thousand. That means it will add 10 cents per thousand of assessed value to your bill, which equates to about an additional $50 for the average $500,000 home. How do I get to there? That one. Going back to there. So you add it all up, the $1.59 for state, county, and town, $12.65 for East Quogue services, and 10 cents for the village services. You get $14.34 per thousand of assessed value. Budget details. As I said earlier, what we are proposing would cost the average $500,000 home about $50 a year. $50 a year to have control and make decisions concerning 80% of your tax bill. To put it another way, becoming an incorporated village where you decide what happens in your neighborhood costs a lot less than what we currently pay for library services. Remember that number from the other slide? That was 33 cents per thousand. The village budget is a process involving the village government and the public. Please take the time to look at the proposed budget, posted at the website and available at the back of the room. See if there's anything that you think should be added or modified. Our thorough review of area budgets shows that you can run a successful village in the way and for the cost that we have proposed. How could this happen? Peter B. kind of went over this earlier. The entire process is mandated by New York State law. Petitions circulated, which we've already started, and by signing a petition, you are not making a decision to incorporate, you're simply making a decision to bring it to a vote. The noted petitions are validated by the town supervisor. After the public hearings are conducted, a date is set to vote for or against the incorporation. The fee for this process is mandated by New York State. The total is $6,000, most of which we have been very appreciative. We have almost just about raised. So, the early years, transitional plan. Sorry. The town is required by law to continue to provide all the services to us in the same manner for 2 years. We would start slow and small and get organized. We will review services and look for ways to improve them at lower cost. Step 1 would be to elect an unpaid village board consisting of a nonpartisan mayor, 4 trustees to act as the legislative and governing body for our village, and set up an office. Next, adopt the village comprehensive plan based on the town comprehensive plan and years of historical planning. All those past legislations I mentioned in that earlier slide, that would become part of the village comprehensive plan. Then, establish appointed, unpaid, building, zoning, and planning review boards to administer village code with the goal of achieving school property tax relief over time. Remember, school taxes make up 80% of your total tax bill. The village board would work to reduce taxes, control expenses, and plan wisely for our future with your input. So, what do you think? 3 reasons why we want to incorporate: local control, quality of life, and shaping the future. This whole thing is about decision-making for our future. Who would you rather have making decisions for East Quogue? A professional politician with regional agendas and political aspirations, or the people of East Quogue? The committee believes that the people of East Quogue would do a better job. We hope that you think that as well. One last thing, picture this. How nice would it be to go to Village Hall to get help with your questions and concerns rather than going to Southampton Town Hall for help? You can go to Village Hall where you know everyone and everyone knows you, and you can have a direct influence in your community's future. Thank you. And let's open it up to questions.
Do we have any questions? Sure.
I don't know if you realize this, but volunteerism is on the way out. Having people to volunteer today is very difficult. But the young people want to be paid. They want to get paid for what they do. Organizations cannot get people to come into them because they don't want to volunteer. And you're going to have all these committees in this village, volunteers, come out of the woodwork to volunteer. I think that's a problem.
It's a valid concern, but they're not all here. There's 15 people that volunteered the last 7 months of their life that started.
You got a lot more up there than that.
There's 3 firemen. I'm a fireman. There's a lot of people here that are willing to do the job. There's a lot of people willing to do the job. There's a lot of really good people here in East Quogue. A lot of people want to be involved. So yes, I think across the board you're correct. Suffolk County's actually have a very big problem. But I think East Quogue, completely different.
Until they're in position and actually doing it and seeing the work involved and so forth, as a volunteer, that feeling can change rapidly in a situation.
I agree.
It's something you've got to really consider strongly before you do something like that.
We've spoken in detail about this. We really have, and we spoke to a lot of people who are real interested in doing the positions. Very interested. George?
So, all right, first question is, who controls the beaches?
You got it, if you can.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, the first question is, who controls the beaches in East Quogue, in the town of Southampton, and the revenue from those beaches?
Well, at the moment, all the beaches that are in East Quogue are owned by Southampton Town. That could be changed though. There have been talks of trying to get ownership of Hot Dog Beach and things of that nature, but that's going to take time. That's part of the growth period that we're talking about.
Okay, next question is, can you detail how our school taxes will go down?
Okay, so values will go up of homes here, hopefully secondary homes that will pay the bills. So if you have secondary homes that don't give kids or don't have kids that come to the school, they'll start paying the bills for the school. So, to use the Hills as an example, if that $500 million worth of homes was built and not a single kid came into the school, that would certainly offset the taxes here.
Okay, can you go over the boundaries? Is it possible some of us here may not be in the village boundary?
Well, the boundary runs through coterminous with Hampton Bays, and as everybody knows, over towards the easterly part is a part of Hampton Bays, so we live in 11946, but we're actually East Quogue residents because we are here in the school. That's going to be like Foxborough, that would be, I think Homewood, Foxborough, TSA, that TSA area, I think everybody's pretty familiar with that area. That's Hampton Bays mailing, but it's East Quogue School District, therefore it makes it East Quogue. And then all the way to Quogue, and up to Flanders. So 104, up where Flanders comes down, also is the part of it.
Okay, how will the signatures be gathered? Door to door or some other way?
Both. So we've already done one event at the New Moon Cafe where we had a signing drive. We're going to do stuff at Loper's in East Quogue here. We're going to go door to door. A lot of us have friends, so we're going to go to their friends and get signatures. Hopefully when we come to your door, you don't shut it in our face.
Okay, who appoints the appointed positions?
The appointed positions will be appointed by a mayor, the first person elected as mayor, whoever that might be, whoever's willing to run.
Okay, if we incorporate as a village, what will be the ruling body? A mayor, council people? If so, how many?
So there's one mayor and 4 trustees. That would be the ruling body of the squad.
Will we maintain voting rights for town elections as well?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That doesn't go anywhere. So we're still going to have to do votes. And the village votes, normally speaking, you're in the June area, end of June, I believe. And then you'll still have your regular votes in November for the rest of the town.
Okay. I pay taxes, but I am not a resident. Will my vote count?
As long as you are registered in East Quogue. If you are a renter that is registered in East Quogue as your primary home, you can vote.
Okay.
I'm sorry, so what is the question?
I'm going to say the question again. I pay taxes, but I am not a resident. Will my vote count?
Oh, I apologize. No, if you're not a resident, you don't vote. Simple as that. I apologize. I thought that they said.
Okay.
Sometimes violated, but the law is that in any election, you must be what's called a domiciliary. Your main primary residence must be within that locality. So if you're voting for the supervisor of the town, and you live in East Quogue, then you're probably going to be eligible to vote for mayor and board of trustees. But you need to be eligible to vote. That involves being a citizen of the United States over the age of 18, registered to vote, and you have to, in order to register to vote, declare that to be your primary residence. Now the courts have gotten a little bit more flexible about what constitutes your primary residence, but you must select some place and say, that's where my primary residence is. Wherever that is, that's where you're entitled to vote. You cannot vote both in Florida and New York. You must decide in which state you live, even if you spend time in both states. You cannot vote in Southampton and New York City, even though you have an apartment in both places. You must pick one place as your primary residence, and once you have picked that, then that's where you're allowed to register and vote.
The next question is, why use Sagaponack as a model? They are in 1% of the most expensive zip codes in the United States. Why use average home cost as $300 million in that village?
They're not relative. So Sagaponack is just a sample or example that we're using because they have very little government. That's the only reason why we're using it. It has nothing to do with the value of the homes. It has to do with the quantity of government. So it's not a relative statement, meaning that Sagaponack doesn't drive the numbers. We drive the numbers. The numbers are what they are. So you saw the budget. So the only reason we use it was because they have a very small version of government. We don't want to do Quogue did because they have a very large version of government, and that's not what we're intending on doing.
Okay. If the village comes to fruition, would there be a building moratorium, in parentheses, new applications, until boards are established?
I don't think we can answer that because until we elected a body of government, there's nothing to say. I'll let Peter take that one.
You are correct. Until you elect your board of trustees, you can speculate as to what they will do, but you won't know what they do until they get elected and make the vote. So we live in a representative democracy in which once these people are empowered to be trustees, it will be up to them to enact local laws. Hopefully, they will run on platforms and describe their intention to vote certain ways honestly, and you will be able to choose representatives that are espousing views with which you agree. And then when they get elected into office, they will follow up on that. I hope. You hope. Has anybody ever run for office and made a promise and not kept it? Sure. But less frequently when you're a volunteer at a village level than when you're a professional politician at a county or state level.
All right. This is included with the person who asked the last question. The area next to Quogue Wildlife Refuge is included in your map, yet I believe the kids who live there go to Quogue School and people have rights to Quogue Village, beaches, etc. Why is this area included?
Oh, okay, so that is still East Quogue. Wildlife 1 area up there is still East Quogue, but they do go to Quogue School. That is currently the way it's going to stand. They can petition us to become part of East Quogue. I highly doubt they will because they have access to the Quogue Village Beach.
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
They don't?
No.
Oh, I apologize. You know what?
No.
Someone who lives
I
there.
live in that area. I apologize. Yeah, I live in that area off 44 Lane. I pay Quogue school taxes, but we live in East Quogue. My permitting process goes through the town of Southampton, so we go through the East Quogue. And no, you don't have access to the village, Quogue Village Beach.
No.
Okay. What percentage of homes in East Quogue are currently secondary? Is there a map of the actual boundaries available?
Well, the boundary is right there. The secondary, I don't think we have a list of the secondary. We don't have a list of that as of yet. I'm sure there's a ton of them.
That's my question. That map, is that available anywhere online?
Online, on the
See
website.
the actual roads, et cetera, on it?
Yes, there's two ways to do it. There's one that we have it on our website, which is villageofeastquogue.com or the Village of East Quogue Exploratory Committee.com. And then it's also available on Southampton Town's info. You can actually literally look it up through Southampton Town. It's a bit difficult to get there, but if you see me later, I can give you a .com for that.
And it's on the back of the brochure.
It's on the back of the brochure as well.
Right, but he wants to see all the streets and
Yeah,
everything.
you'll have to dive into it.
Okay, this, I'm going to read it as best I can here. It says, tax paper not voting here now can't vote now for or against the village.
That's my question.
Yeah, tax,
The lady back there said she's a taxpayer. Does not vote here now. So if a vote happened this year that you're anticipating, she cannot vote in that,
Yeah.
even though she's a
We answered
taxpayer.
that.
No.
That's what the lady
She would
wanted to
have,
know.
she would have to change where she's registered to vote.
She would have to change where she's registered to
You can't
vote.
do that in time for this election.
Yes, she can.
Because
Yes, she
you
can.
have to have
Yes, she can.
voted
Yes, she
last year to vote.
You can do it within a week, I think.
I'm telling you that's the law.
So,
okay,
you have an
we're
answer
going
to
to
that?
move on.
Can you answer that, Peter? Yeah.
It's 30 days. You have to be a resident of the area with 30 days before the election. So as long as she registers now, she'd be in within 30 days, assuming we don't submit the petition tomorrow.
You may be referencing that a change of enrollment to your political party can take a year, but your change of registration can be very quick.
Yes.
The question that lady has is, can she vote?
If she changes her registration
Change, right?
within 30 days.
Okay, if incorporated, can Southampton Town raise Eagles Walk condo taxes since we are not under Southampton rule anymore?
No. They can't just simply raise taxes for no reason whatsoever.
How do you know that?
Because it's the way it is now.
I'd like to make sure I understand the question. Could you
If incorporated, can Southampton Town raise Eagles Walk condo taxes since we are not under Southampton rule anymore?
I don't know your geography that well, so the question is, could the town raise the taxes, the real property taxes, of a place that will be inside the village?
Yes.
It's inside, it was already built as constructed by Southampton Town, a special unit within East Quogue for seniors that is controlled by Southampton Town. Now, if we go and be pulled out, will they zap us for that?
I would have to actually read the legislation for that district, but broadly speaking, you will not exempt yourself from general town taxes. There are a number of district taxes that you can say to the town, we now intend to provide that service. We don't want to be in that district anymore. And generally what will happen is the town lets you out of the district and you pay for that service directly into the village. Or you could say, we don't want to supply that service. We're going to stay in that town district. Again, the town will have control over town taxes, which will also, broadly speaking, include all the district taxes. The village only is going to control its village taxes. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you.
We'll have to look into it.
Okay, the next question is there a tax cap for village so taxes can't go up a lot every year?
Yes. State law provides the so-called tax cap, which is either 2% or the cost of living measured from certain dates to other dates, which is oftentimes below 2%. But that tax cap can be, like any village, like any town, like any county, like any school, can be broken. There are different methodologies for the different types of government, but a village is authorized to break the tax cap, but in order to do it, it needs a special vote of its Board of Trustees. The town is authorized to break the tax cap. The school is authorized to break the tax cap. Each one is authorized to do so. It is politically unwise to do so, and it requires special procedures. The law applies, but the law applies both in establishing the cap and in authorizing the cap to be broken.
Okay, how much does it cost to file for incorporation?
$6,000.
That one was answered before, I think $6,000.
Okay, who would be the paid position and who determines the salaries?
Yeah, it's in the budget. You can look at it in there. It's in a good form, in a numbered form. If you look at it's in the folder. It's all detailed. So take a look at that rather than trying to sit here and follow numbers while we're speaking.
Okay. What positions are elected officials?
Mayor and the 4 trustees. That's it.
Okay. Can the golf project still come back? And if so, how much recurring revenue would that bring into village?
That's out of our hands. We have nothing to do with that. It's before the ZBA, and it'll be decided long before we have our chance to make anything happen.
Okay. I heard from a local civic leader that incorporation will cost $2 million. Is that true?
No, we just outlined what it would cost you. $6,000 for the permit. It's cost this body some money that we have donated. So no, it does not cost $2 million.
Okay. The next question is in regards to police coverage. The East Quogue sector car is often pulled to cover other sections, leaving East Quogue without police protection.
That is true. We've heard multiple complaints about that. It's something that we're trying to address. We're trying to figure out who we might be able to negotiate with, whether it be Quogue Village, sheriffs, Southampton Town, but we're going to get a car that stays here permanently. It's something that we need to work on.
Sagaponack pays $2.2 million to Southampton Town for police service. How much will police service cost? Would we look at other departments?
Well, we have 1.2 million, correct, at the moment. We're 1.2 right now. That's not going to change as of now. Can we negotiate that down? We might be able to. We might also negotiate a better deal all around, having a car stay here.
Will the village have control? Will the village have control over traffic patterns?
We do have some. I think you had a really good description of how that works.
Basically, over village roads, you will have traffic control over your village roads. The state vehicle and traffic law allows you to set speed limits within certain limits and allows you to place traffic control devices on your village roads. They have to conform to certain standards promulgated by the state, but the broad answer is yes on village roads.
Okay. Will you have your own code enforcement officer? Will the existing codes be the same carried over from Southampton Town?
We would like to see our own code enforcement officer so that we can enforce codes. It's one of the biggest problems they're having in Hampton Bays currently, is that they cannot, for whatever reason, get Southampton Town to enforce their codes. And it will be the same codes that are currently on the books of Southampton Town.
Does the town of Southampton supervisor support this effort?
Apparently he does. He was in the paper saying so.
What are the qualifications needed to be on the boards?
You're a resident of East Quogue. I believe you have to be a voter of East Quogue, a resident, and you pay taxes here and it's your primary residence.
What is the time frame from now to the election?
It's hard to say. We have to get the signatures first, and that's the first part of it. We're currently working on that, so that's going to determine how long. It could be 30 days, it could be 60, it could be 90, it could be 100, who knows.
Do you have the petitions ready?
Yes, they're in the back right now to be ready to be signed, so I hope everybody funnels their way there and signs them.
How much do other villages pay in taxes per $1,000? Sag Harbor, Quogue.
I don't have those answers. Do we have those answers?
It's totally different.
Completely different anyway. You can't really use Quogue at all because they have police, they have highway, they have roads, they have beaches, they have all sorts of stuff that adds to that number. So to try to compare it to us wouldn't work.
Second part of that question from the same person. How could Hampton Bays bring East Quogue into their village?
So when we determined our borders, as a matter of fact, I'm going to let Peter answer that. You have a better.
Again, I'm not sure I got the question right.
Okay. The question is, how could Hampton Bays, the neighboring town, bring East Quogue into their village?
The neighboring hamlet.
Neighboring.
Unincorporated or?
Yes.
It's an unincorporated area?
Yeah, it's another hamlet.
With 3 times our population.
Okay, well, I guess, you know, the concept here, though, they're not going to be a part of the geography you've outlined for yourselves.
Right, but the question is, if Hampton Bays were to decide to incorporate themselves, how could they include East Quogue into their area?
The same process that is taking place right now, as long as you're not a village. If you're not a village and you're only a hamlet, then somebody else, somewhere else, can draw a set of boundary lines, collect 20% of the signatures, petition the town, have a vote, and the majority of those who vote on that election day in the area described would determine whether or not that becomes a new village. Is it possible to subsequently disassociate from a village? Yes, in theory, a lot tougher to do. So the answer is whoever gets there first.
Okay. Who can sign the petitions?
The short answer would be registered voters.
How many petition signers to go forward?
20% of the residents eligible to vote. I'm sorry?
700 and change.
700 and change thousand? I'm being told.
700.
700.
Approximately 700.
Approximately 700.
Is there a time frame to get petitions signed?
As soon as possible is the answer. The statute does not provide a date on which the signatures become stale, but a court could decide that a signature that is 2 years old is stale. I think they're going to be looking for something on the order of 6 months or less, but that's the determination of the court.
Okay. Who would control the wetlands in the proposed village of East Quogue?
Again, a complex question. If they're inside your geography, you will have certain authority over it. But if you're talking about true wetlands, I can tell you that the Department of Environmental Conservation and others will have a lot to say about it as well, if they are true wetlands.
I know most of you know me, Scott Horowitz, trustee, treasurer of the Board of Trustees. I just want to circle back on something about the beach question, because that's where I think that we really need to take a look at it. How many people here in this room live on that Atlantic Ocean coastline borders? Anybody here live there? Nobody lives there. So some of it in East Quogue is private property. And the trustees hold an easement across that private property. Some of it's county, some of it's bought with community preservation funds. But the Board of Trustees, which is the oldest continually elected board in North America, we have these colonial patents that protect all of the citizens across the entire township and the villages, so that people can use the beaches for traditional and historical uses. You've read about these court cases from time to time in the paper, and you've seen it on TV. I'm sure you've seen it all go down. One thing that's very important for people to understand about forming a village and the town trustees. We own the Bay Bottoms, we control a lot of the wetlands. I saw a lot of the pictures up here where properties that are owned by the trustees. That is always going to be. I think that villages have to work with the trustees on forming good policies that protect water quality, shellfish, eelgrass, and it all feeds into our qualities of life. Where you really have to take a look at it, and I think council is going to have to really take a look at this, and that is recent court cases that the trustees had and lost regulatory authority of hardened structures on ocean beaches is where you really got to take a hard look at making sure that the village policies take into consideration what is allowed when people are protecting their property. You have to understand oceanfront homeowners are going to want to protect their property. But what we've all learned, what science has shown us, is that ocean waves, heavy ocean waves, pounding against a hardened structure is gonna scour out that beach, and then you got the potential of losing your beach, okay? So whatever those policies are that the village sets for how they're gonna allow people to protect their homes in the private property areas that the trustees hold an easement on, you're gonna have to pay very close attention to that. Because it's different than Garden City, it's different than other places, and we're also going to have to take a look at the administration of endangered species programs and things like that. These are all historical things that the trustees have done throughout the township and with some of the villages. It's not insurmountable, it's just policy decisions where I think people have to get around the table, understand what the objectives are that they want to protect, and find the best way to do that, people working together. So I just think it's a consideration.
I totally support that. I'm the village attorney in the village of Ocean Beach, which is on Fire Island, which is also a part of the National Seashore. So whatever the village of Ocean Beach wants to enact a local law, it has to do so understanding that the concerns of the federal government in the park in which the village is located have to also be addressed. And there are endangered species, there are all kinds of issues when you have to protect the rights of people not only in your village, but outside your village. So it can be done. The village does have authority in those areas, but it's an authority that is circumscribed by rights that are already established for the residents of the town, the county, and the United States when it comes to coastland.
Okay,
I thank you very much. I have an obligation at home. I need to leave, and I thank you for your time.
Is the vote a simple majority?
Yes, it's a simple majority. As Peter said before, if 10 people vote and 6 people vote yes, then it's passed.
Okay. Does one person make the appointments?
No, board makes the appointments.
Peter.
Look, Peter.
Most village appointments are made by the mayor, but are subject to confirmation by the Board of Trustees. So the mayor can't do it alone, but the board doesn't make the appointment. The mayor makes the appointment, the board confirms the appointment. There are exceptions to that. The members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, as I recall, are actually made by, the appointments are by the board. But the law outlines which appointments are the mayor's, which appointments are the Board of Trustees. So there are some that are exclusively mayors. I think the appointment of a deputy mayor in the absence of a mayor. So again, there's a list. Most appointments are by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the Board of Trustees.
You use the term law.
New York State village law. New York State has a body of law placed into a book literally called the Village Law. And that's where you find the powers and duties of the mayor, a board of trustees, zoning boards of appeal, planning commissions, architectural boards, etc.
Okay, yes, stay right there. After the 2-year window of town providing services, can they raise the cost to us for the services we keep with them? For example, can the police cost raise after 2 years?
I'm not aware that East Quogue is contemplating having its own police force, so you're probably talking about the town police force.
Yes.
And just as they could raise the cost of police services today, they could raise the cost of police services tomorrow.
But not
they
specifically.
can't, well, if you have a negotiated intermunicipal agreement under which you're contracting with the town for police services, then the contract will obligate the village. But it doesn't usually work that way. Towns are not in the profit-making business. They're in the business of delivering services. That's one of the huge differences between private sector and public sector. In the private sector, you figure out what your income is going to be, and then you figure out what you can spend it on. In the public sector, you figure out what services you need to deliver, and then you raise the taxes to pay for them. Now that's an overstatement and oversimplified, but there's enough truth in it. And therefore, I think you can safely say that they're not going to be raising the cost of police services to a village that is contracting for them in any way that is materially different from the way they're analyzing the cost of police services for the balance of the town.
The next thing I think is just a statement. I'm just going to read how it's written. No beach, a problem.
Yeah, that was me. I think a big part of this, a big benefit of this would be having a private beach, the residents only. Now, you had said you were negotiating with the town, what we're talking about with the town. That, to me, is not sufficient. It would be imperative, I think, to get my vote, that we had a village beach on the ocean.
Well, we would like that, but there is a process we have to go to. So right now it would be status quo. It'd be a town beach, and then obviously we'd have to work with the village and see if we couldn't take over the beach.
You wanted to say something, Scott? You don't know? I don't know either. It's a negotiation, but.
I can tell you that, Hot Dog Beach obviously is owned by the town. There's a bunch of properties there. I think the town spent like, $20 some odd million buying up all types of properties there. The trustees own the access roads, all those roads that lead down, straight to the ocean. They're owned by the trustees. Those will stay always owned by the trustees for the benefit of all the residents of the town. That's what we're all about. And the trustees will protect the easement across any village, okay? It's important to understand that the village mayors and the village boards don't have a standing if somebody in a village tries to block an easement and block a beach from anybody going fishing or flying a kite or wanting to go sunbathe, whatever. They don't have any authority. They have to come to the town trustees. That patent is held by the town trustees. And that will always stay across any of the villages. But in terms of negotiating with, the town on Hot Dog Beach and making some type of thing, that would be between you and the town. But the trustees will retain all of those roads as access points for everybody.
Thank you, Scott.
Did anybody want to hand in any other cards?
Can I just make a comment on that? Isn't the point that if there's a village of East Quogue, it's possible to have a beach?
Absolutely.
And now it's not.
Anything's possible.
You can't get
That's
the
the
beach if
point.
you're not a village.
The point
We have to become a village before we can negotiate.
Right.
It's that simple.
It's possible if you become
Possible.
a village. It's not possible.
How does Quogue have their village beach? How did they get it?
They must have purchased it a long time ago. I mean, that's the only way they can own it.
Ed, can you comment?
No, it had to be purchased. That's why Quogue Village owns the beach.
I think the village of Quogue purchased half of their beach a couple of years ago.
Purchased half of it a couple of years. Oh, they purchased no, it was donated. The roundhouse is what you're talking about?
The original No, they purchased that with community funds.
So Quogue purchased the roundhouse with community funds.
So,
Okay.
so why don't we just do some research?
So we could use our
on
funds.
this,
And we should do some research and get back on that. There's a lot to that. It's something that needs to be looked into.
They purchased the other 50 people.
Okay.
We'll have better answers for you. We'll post them on the website. So that's a good question.
We're currently paying $1.2 million for one car, and it's not here most of the time for police.
I'm going to call it a quarter car because it's only here a quarter of the time.
Where do I apply for that job?
It's not that. He's getting called to like Flanders. He's getting called to Hampton Bays. They're there. The car is around, but it's getting called to multiple calls throughout the town and never staying here in East Quogue.
We also, I want to be fair to the town police. If we need additional resources, they'll send other cars here if we have a high crime incident. It just happens in East Quogue. We're fortunate we don't have a lot of crime.
Well, there's also, and I haven't spoke to somebody about this, as a matter of fact, today. If, let's say the 22 car, which is our car, is out of town, Quogue Villages also has an agreement that they'll come in and take anything that's happening at the time in East Quogue. So there's ways that they're going to use that to facilitate police presence, but we don't have a car that stays here. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
It was mentioned you would have an office. Where would this office be and who would pay for it?
Well, we have the money in the budget. If you look at the line item budget, there's a rental piece in there. We don't know where it's going to be because we're not a village yet. Rental of a storefront, rental of a room. Don't need much. We don't know yet because we have to become a village first before we rent anything.
Thank you.
All right. You want to close it?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Would I lose, would I take, like I said, right now I go to Tiana Beach. Would I lose the ability to do that if you go to Incorporation?
No, not at all.
Right, I'm not saying that. I think
You're a Southampton town resident.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. Thoughtful questions. Very much appreciate you taking the time to be with us here tonight. Petitions are in the back. We have a fundraiser coming up this coming Sunday, July 1st at Dockers. Lots of raffles and prizes. Guaranteed to have a good time. We'll have petitions there as well too. We hope to see you all there, and we do hope that we have your support, or we have at least given you the information to make an informed decision. Thank you very much.